Hi, George Kurtz here. We're getting ready to go to Road America, which is our favorite track in the entire country. It's a fantastic spot. We hope that you follow us online at our website and keep tabs on our racing. Should be really exciting, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
I'm really glad that all of you were able to join us and hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future at future virtual CXOs.
Great battle, great time here in Sonoma. Really glad to be back on the podium. But we got some work to do. We're going to get the next step here soon. So looking forward, we've got Road America in a couple of weeks. We're going to look at the car. We're going to see what we can do to make it even faster, and we're going to come back stronger than ever.
This is CJ Moses, driver of the 04 AWS CrowdStrike Honda TCR car. We're here at the iconic Road America Raceway. Coming up the front, straight up the hill, you see it's a large increase in altitude. Here we go across start finish, heading down into a very high speed turn 1, where we'll actually be decreasing down through 5th and 4th gear, take 4th gear, a little bit of braking, then back to the throttle, around carrying speed, using all the runoff here to this outside, moving down into what we call turn 3. We'll actually get a little bit of brake in here, get to 3rd gear, accelerate out off the corner. This is a very important turn because as we're going down this little short chute here, it turns into a longer straightaway that leads us down into turn 5. This is going under the Sargento Bridge. We're wide open, grabbing gears, going all the way through all the gears, all the way up into 6th gear. It's an important braking zone that you're down here. We're actually going to brake right at the just past the 300 marker, all the way down to 2nd gear in order to climb the hill, going up into turn 6. Here I am passing a BMW that's in another class. Go inside here, we're actually 3rd gear, back to the throttle. Let the car normally rotate out a little bit further, but with that car there we had to delay. Down here into turn 7, a slight lift back straight to the throttle, carrying all the way down into turn 8. We're going to take this down into 2nd gear, turn inside using all the curbing, accelerate off this, grab 3rd gear, get set up for this carousel where we're going to be doing a 180-degree turn all the way around. We're using as much of the throttle as we can, keeping the car lined up to go. Back to full throttle because here we go down another short chute straight. We're moving to the iconic kink. We're going to go ahead here off the throttle, back onto the throttle, and carry speed through these 2 concrete walls at 120 miles an hour. We're coming down into an iconic turn as well, Canada Corner, where we're moving all the way into 6th gear. This is the fastest part of the track for us between here and turn 5. And we're going to get down to 3rd gear, back to the throttle, missed that one a little bit, should have been on the inside a little bit more. Up into turn 13, just a slight lift, back to the throttle, carrying it all the way up and over the hill, carrying on through all the way back to turn 13, just get the car pointed, back to through turn 14, full throttle, or accelerating back up the hill. One of the things you can see here is in the in-car shot, you can actually see the technology that the Honda TCR car has. You notice that I never shifted a gear by moving my hand off the steering wheel. I actually have paddle shifting. So I have the ability just to go ahead and click off the up shifts and down shifts without ever taking my hands off the wheel.
Hey guys, Kevin Boehm here, driver of the number 9 TCA Honda Civic SI for CrowdStrike Racing. We were able to start second today in our second race of the weekend and got a really good start. Moved to the front right from the beginning and stayed there for the rest of the race. So we were able to get our second win of the weekend, so really happy about that. We weren't the only ones that were successful though. We had 2 of our DXDT CrowdStrike Racing teammates also on the podium in TCR. So it's really cool to have everybody being successful all at the same event. So really happy, great results for CrowdStrike Racing. So one more race tomorrow, so we're gonna try to do it again.
CJ Moses here, driver of the AWS CrowdStrike Honda TCR car. We're here at Road America after race 2, just doing a little recap. Today started out pretty good. We actually moved up a little bit, but unfortunately right there on the first lap we had a little bit of contact in turn 5 and ended up moving our way up into 3rd place. So we ended up with a podium finish today. Very pleased about that and getting ready. The team is doing a great job. I've got a new splitter on the car and ready to go for tomorrow. We'll get out there and give it another shot.
Hey guys, Colin Brown here, driver of the 04 CrowdStrike DXDT Mercedes. Just give you a little update on the day. We had qualifying this morning. That went pretty darn well for us. We had a little mechanical issue. I think that just took us a little off where we could have been, but all in all, good qualifying effort. Race 1 didn't get off to such a great start for us, unfortunately. Had a little contact in turn 1 that put us in the gravel trap with a bit of damage to the car. Came back into the pits, got it fixed up. These guys did a really nice job. Got back out there, sort of waiting for that yellow flag to come out. It never did. So, you know, all in all, we learned some things about what we need for the race car for tomorrow to be fast. We're starting up near the front tomorrow and looking forward to hopefully having a good result for all the CrowdStrike guys and keep this Mercedes up in the points.
Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin is a classic American road course. Just a few miles outside of town, this 4-mile track snakes through late summer countryside. It's a spectator's paradise and a racer's playground. There's no greater haven for American motorsport than the National Park of Speed, and no better place to test the bravery of man and the speed of machine. Good afternoon and welcome to a beautiful August day in Elkhart Lake. My name is Kyle Heyer. You're watching CrowdStrike Racing's coverage of GT World Challenge America, where I'm joined by CrowdStrike AWS driver Kevin Boehm from DXDT Racing. Road America is a special place, Kevin, but it's just that much more special with a couple trophies on the shelf after this weekend and 2 wins and a second. Not too shabby, if I do say so myself.
That's right. We showed up and the car felt great right off the trailer, and we put together a lot of good results this weekend. So really happy so far for sure.
Awesome. So Kevin Boehm, again, a driver for CrowdStrike and AWS for DXDT Racing. AWS and CrowdStrike share a 360-degree relationship. CrowdStrike runs on the AWS cloud, while AWS uses CrowdStrike to secure its servers. CrowdStrike is an AWS premier partner and extends its suite of security offerings to all AWS's customers, in turn making AWS the most secure cloud in the world. AWS is the title presenter for the Global SRO Series GT World Challenge presented by AWS. For 13 years, AWS has been the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform, offering over 175 fully featured cloud computing services. Last year, the firm entered into a new collaboration that saw AWS become the official cloud and machine learning provider for SRO America, as well as series partner Pirelli GT4 America and TC America. Effective cybersecurity means you see and stop threats like hackers as fast as possible. That's why every second counts. And Kevin, you're as fast as possible, and so is Road America. Take us through a lap around here.
Sure. Road America is a really unique track because it was built in the 50s, and it is very high speed, and there's many dangerous parts. So as we come up to turn 1, you're almost at the maximum speed you're going to go, and it's a high speed 4th gear turn. It's just a little bit slow down, carry a lot of speed down through 2, which is mostly a straightaway, and then 3 is downhill brake zone. A lot of passing happens there, and it sets you up on another long straightaway through turn 4, and then turn 5 is another downhill brake zone where you you have to really be careful if you're leading, because people are going to try to pass you there, but it also gives you places to pass. Then after turn 5, you kind of start immediately going uphill, and you go under a bridge, and it's blind to the left, and you have to really settle the car before you can really get the power down. And then turn 7 is a really, really fast right-hander that you really can attack the curbs and carry a lot of speed there. And then turn 8 is another downhill brake zone where you see a lot of passing. So after turn 8, you kind of go into the carousel and carry a lot of speed through there. And then the famous kink. It's really, really blind. You can't see through it, and you carry tons of speed through the kink all the way to Canna Corner, another passing zone. And then you go through there through turn 13. Really tough, almost flat in these GT3 cars. And then turn 14, another passing zone, setting you up for the first straight.
So with that out of the way, Kevin, we're about to get rolling here for the second race of the weekend in GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Yesterday, for the DXTT racing cars, at the start, there was a little bit of drama. And by a little bit of drama, I mean there was a lot of drama. Turn 1, 3 wide, a little bit of contact, and it led to Kurtz kind of backing up into the gravel trap. And the sister car, the 63, also got turned around. So hopefully today will go a little bit smoother. And this time the pros start the car, so that we'll see if that has an outcome or a difference on the outcome here once we turn them loose here in just about a lap. We only get one pace lap here today, so warm up those tires, warm up those brakes.
Yeah, you have to really get everything warmed up around Road America. The temperature is a little cooler than they've been the whole week so far, so they're going to be trying to get the temperature in the tires now. They're already halfway through the one lap that they get, so basically, it's if you don't get that temperature in the tires and the brakes, the car is not going to perform the way it should when the race starts.
And throughout this race, we'll be referring to the amazing P1TS software that'll track strategies and lap times and that sort of thing. And we have a really cool new feature today where we can track fastest lap time and look at individual sectors as well. So that'll be really helpful in mid-race. I know that George Kurtz especially was really fast in Sector 2 yesterday in the first end of the race after they got that car back out on track. So about to rack him up and stack him up for a green flag here for 90 minutes of racing. And the weather today, beautiful out there, Kevin. And I know this morning you had a race that started with a little bit of drama as well. There was a bit of a stack up in front of you that sort of delayed the get going. But today, I think with some luck, we'll get through the first lap under green flag conditions today.
Yeah, I mean, the first lap is always the most nerve-wracking because all the cars are so close together. So definitely all these guys are pros, so they've been in this situation so many times before. I'm sure they're not as nervous as some of the AM guys are, but definitely this is the time where bad things are most likely to happen.
And who are we following today? It's going to be the DXTT racing cars. It's the red and black Mercedes that you're going to see. It's going to be driven by Colin Brown. And then the other car will be the 63. That will be driven by Ryan Dial. So that car is going to start right up on the front row, right alongside Trent Hinman in the Racer's Edge Motorsports Acura NSX GT3. And the sister cars nose to tail this time. And here they come up the hill here, and this is when the heart rate picks up a little bit and the mind focuses all the way down there on that first corner. It's a long way from here.
That's right. You're kind of searching. You can't even see the starter stand at this point of the track because there's this huge hill in front of you. So you're kind of relying on your crew chief on the radio to kind of let you know what's happening. But now you can see the flag stand, and it's about to go green.
All right, 90 minutes of racing for GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS from the National Park of Speed. Green flag flies, and we're racing at the 4-mile Road America, side-by-side for second place already, as the Blackstock car is actually Blackstock is, I don't know if the driver's names are correct on the timing and scoring there. It should be the pros starting this race today. As we head down into the first corner, the 63 is going to slot out into third, and around the outside goes the blue and white Porsche, which was a factory yesterday inside the top 3.
Yeah, that's right. The cars are already back into single file, so it's kind of everybody settling into the pace that they're going to go. As you see Colin really be aggressive on the exit of 3 there.
Yeah, that's behind that 33 car, which is, I believe, the Windward Racing entry. That was a big factor yesterday as well, up towards the front, battling with Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman for a little bit, but then the Acura just pulled away. But now down into turn 5, Brown around the outside of turn 5. Can he carry the speed? And he'll go around the silver car and slot himself into P4.
Yeah, that's a great pass. There's actually a lot of grip in turn 5 there, and you can make that outside pass work.
Now through turn 6 and 7, the hurry downs area here, Kevin. This is a lot of speed down here into turn 8. Very similar to turn 5 in a lot of ways, but then you head to the carousel, a sweeping corner as the 63, Ryan DL pull right up to the back of Root as they come through turn 8 and 9.
Yeah, the carousel is a super high-speed long turn. It's turning almost, it's more than 180 degrees and super high speed, and it leads onto the fastest part of the track here. So you're going to see a lot of single file through here for the most part.
And then the kink, the high-speed section. Speeds well over 100 miles an hour through this section, tracking all the way out to the edge of the curbing and then into Canada corner, one of the most scenic corners in racing history, I think. But the drivers will be paying no attention. Their focus is ahead. Now the sister cars, the DXDT Racing Machines, fighting for third place right now out in front. It's DL in the 63 in third, then Colin Brown in the 04 right behind in fourth, all over the back bumper as they head up the hill.
Yeah, it looks like Colin has just a little bit more pace at this point, so I don't know if it's maybe some tires or something like that, but Colin definitely wants by.
Now, to complete one lap, it takes him about 2 minutes 6, 2 minutes 7 around here. That's flying for 4 miles up the hill, and lap 1 completed, and up front, it's going to be Trent Hinman that's going to lead the way to the line at 2:14, obviously just getting rolling that time through. Rodrigo Baptista in the Ferrari is going to be back third in class, and again, we're following the Pro-Am fight today with the DXDT racing cars. What do I mean by that? Well, there's certain driver designations, Kevin. There are some cars out there, the 93 and the 33, that would be the leading Acura, and the silver Mercedes. Those cars are silver driver lineups, where the drivers that we're following in the DXDT racing camp, Pro-Am. Tell me what that means.
Well, when you have a Pro-Am driver, one of the drivers is basically making his living doing the driving race cars, and the Am driver is more someone who doesn't have tons of experience, but obviously has enough experience to drive these high-speed cars, and really that combination really equalizes the playing field with all the cars.
And you can see right here, here's the colorations, the GT3 Pro-Am, which is what we're following in DXDT Racing. Ryan DL actually leading in that category right now with the sister car right behind in second, but the overall battle is with everybody on track. There are not only these GT3 cars, but there's also GT2 spec cars out there as well. I think we'll get into that a little bit later today, but our focus right now is on the red drivers on the timing and scoring that you see at the bottom right of your screen, and DL and Brown having a pretty solid start to the day so far.
That's right. It seems like they've got a gap to Baptista right now, so I'm sure they want to kind of keep that gap getting bigger, and then they can really sort out their own positions a little bit later in the race.
So the field's spreading out just a little bit now, and I was talking with Jeff Brown the other day down in the paddock, and he's a great guy, by the way, and it was my first time meeting Jeff and Colin, and Jeff was telling me a lot about Colin's childhood out in the backyard on the go-kart track that they have built out there, and how he'd have him run hundreds and thousands of laps just to practice and change tire pressures in tiny little increments, and have Jeff would tell his son which, to go figure out which tire is the one that's overinflated by half a PSI. It was such an interesting conversation, but I asked CJ this the other day, where'd you get your start? How'd you get yourself into racing?
Well, I mean, really, I just went to a club race when I was in high school and really decided, oh, well, I really want to do this, and kind of talked with some of the teams, and some of the guys I talked to were engineers, and that's what sort of set me on my path to become a mechanical engineer, and I focused on engineering cars and learned how to make cars go fast about the same time that I got to start driving them, and really my engineering and car driving combination has made a unique experience for me.
Right, you're a senior engineer at Honda R&D, so you got up there as well. So not only are you winning on the racetrack, you've also got a pretty solid career as well. So obviously the start of this race has gone a lot smoother than yesterday, which is great to see. And Trent Hinman now pulling away, and we'll take a look at the lap times here in a little bit. There is a look at the 311 car. That is actually the 31. 31? Yes, that's the second place in GT Sports Club. That is another category of racing. That's ISSA. And this car was also fighting up inside the top 5 yesterday as well. Right in front of him is one of those GT2 Porsches. This is a different kind of car than the others on the racetrack, Kevin.
That's right. It's not got the same amount of downforce. It does have wings and splitters, and it still makes downforce, but not as much as the GT3 cars. But instead, it has a lot more power. So you're going to see these cars go a little bit slower in the turns, but really, really fast in the straightaways. So you see the Ferrari kind of catching him through this twisty section of the track.
Now down towards turn number 8, and we talk about some of the fastest parts of this racetrack. There's a speed trap down by turn 5. We saw the GT3 cars well into the 170s yesterday. That's fast. I mean, your TCA Civic Si is pretty quick, but 170 into the hardest braking zone on the track, that's got to be pretty terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably 50 miles an hour faster than what I was doing earlier today. So, yeah, that is wicked fast at this track.
So we talked about the downforce differences here. The GT2 car is definitely going to have to lift, maybe tap the brakes. The GT3s, at least Colin Brown told us that he went flat through the kink in qualifying the other day, and that's a low fuel load and a whole lot else on board in terms of driver skill to do that. But that's challenging in any kind of race car.
That's right, and I mean the car that I drive, fortunately, is slow enough to where I can do that almost for an entire race. But yeah, to do that in a GT3 car that's going quite a bit faster is that's eye-opening, to say the least.
I think we've talked a lot about how challenging Road America is because there's a lot of hard braking zones. It's very fast. But for you and your Civic Si, what's the most challenging part? Is it that kink over there on the backside of the track, or is it somewhere else?
Well, I mean, the cars that I race are much lower power than these GT3 cars, so the straightaways become really long. You sort of end up being on the straightaway for a long period of time, so it really you have to maximize the how early you get on the throttle, because you want to be carrying even 1 mile an hour faster down the whole straightaway. Makes a lot of lap time, and you have to focus on every single turn because there's a straightaway after every one, and trying to get that perfect for a whole race. And this track's over 4 miles long, so it's really tough to get perfect.
Yeah, it's a long way around, and it ends up being, you lose a tenth in one corner. There's 14 turns. You're off 1.4 seconds, so you're off quite a bit, even if you're off just a little bit in each corner. There's Max Root in the GT3 AM Porsche, and this is an interesting team because this is an all-AM lineup, and they've been really solid this season. Even at Sonoma, they were battling for podiums, and here they are running second overall. Pretty impressive so far for this team.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, and it seems like they've settled into a pretty comfortable second position right now, and you see the two DXDT cars right behind them.
With Ferrari.
I think they went to break on TV. I don't know what we're going to do about that. for now, there we go. Now we're back. Here is a battle for 5th place overall. That is Ward in the number 33 Windward machine. Right behind him, Rodrigo Baptista in the number 1. And Baptista and, well, I'm not sure if it was Baptista, but that car had a lot of trouble in Sonoma with penalties out there. And that sort of ended up, at Sonoma we had a big drama after the race where the CrowdStrike Mercedes actually jumped 2 spots post-race because of infractions and some being overturned.
That's right. It was kind of a pit penalty, kind of was mishandled, and then also getting spun really late in the race really changed the results for CrowdStrike Racing. So definitely the number 1 car here was heavily involved with that, but he's really pushing the car wide there, so that's pretty amazing.
We saw this a lot in the GT4 Sprint X race earlier today. Drivers running wide in turns 1 and 5, well, they give you a whole lot of runoff room there, but it's not necessarily smooth drive over. That's all rumble strip, and it'll shake your teeth out.
Yeah, it's really aggressive. It looks like almost shark's teeth to some extent, and when you get on that, it shakes the car really hard, and the tire's not really touching the ground a lot. So it's nice to have it there as a safety, but you don't really go much faster to use it.
No, but I think you actually knocked a taillight dead on the rear of the Ferrari here as he heads through turn number 6, chasing down the Windward machine as they head through 7 now into the hurry down section. Up front, not missing anything there. It's Trent Hinman by 2 seconds over Max Root. 3rd and 4th in class are 1st and 2nd in GT3 Pro-Am. That's Ryan DL and Colin Brown for DXDT Racing. Then now you're watching the battle for 5th as they head through the carousel. A high-speed section. You're balancing the car through there. And your car is a front-wheel drive car versus these rear-wheel drive machines. Tell me a little bit about that and how that affects your drive through this portion of the track.
Yeah, I mean, the front-wheel drive is kind of the front wheels are pulling the car around, so it naturally kind of stabilizes the car. But these GT3 cars are rear-wheel drive, and the rear wheels are pushing it. And what that does is it makes these a little bit more edgy. They're easier to slide around, and especially going through the carousel and off the corners like this, you're going to see the rear of the car kind of slide out sometimes as they really search for grip.
And this battle continues through Canada Corner, up the hill through turn 13. That's Bill Mitchell Bend. There used to be a bridge over that section of the racetrack. They removed that because the concrete abutments for the bridge were basically right on the outside edge of the corner, which is not a great place to have a big old concrete wall. So they tore that down in 2006 and put in a tunnel under there, which is much safer and nicer, other than the flooding it will sometimes get. It was really rainy on Friday, and I was wondering if it was going to get flooded down there, but I think they had a drain down there now, so that helps. But this racetrack full of lore. We were talking yesterday about the story of Brian Redmond's cat. Have you heard about this?
I heard about a ghost cat.
So you're looking back at the reference to the Brian Redmond cat. So basically, I'll give you the short of the story. You have to Google it to really know all the details to it. But essentially, there was a feral cat that was wandering Road America years ago, and it made friends with all the corner workers because they would feed it. And it was very scrawny when it first discovered that it could beg corner workers for food. As we got a battle for fifth here, and Baptista's going to have a look up the inside. Can't get it done that time. But continue to be fed by corner workers. Then one day it passed away. They have it buried over on the outside of the carousel, and there's actually like a monument for it made out of rocks and flowers. And the legend has it the SCCA corner workers will still sometimes hear the cat around the racetrack. So that's the legend of Brian Redmond's cat. Where Brian Redmond got involved with that, I don't know. He's a British racing driver from a little while ago. But there's Trent Hinman leading this race. And so far, pretty calm and quiet up front. He is setting some amazing laps as we have a look at the lap times here on the bottom right of your screen. So Trent Hinman's are going to be the ones on the right. And have a look here. 2:07.489 is the best lap that we've seen. Sector 3, a 38.2. That's his quickest. But a 2:07.4. These times are a little bit slower than we saw in qualifying. Different conditions, or just the car loaded with more fuel, or is there some combination of the two?
I think it's a lot to do with the fuel, and then in qualifying, you really don't have to kind of manage your tires very much. So here, because they have to drive for around 45 to 55 minutes, they have to be careful not to use too much of the tire at once. That way they can drive that entire length of time.
And there are the DXDT Racing cars still third and fourth on the racetrack. There is Max Root, second overall, crosses the line that time through. And here's Ryan Marine.
Well, this has been a big step in the career of Max Root to jump full-time into GT3 racing. He'd done a little bit of it before, but to get the help from Fred Fordad to make that step. And talking to Fred yesterday after the race, he said part of the goal for this program was to get Max on the radar and help him take the next step in his career. And a big announcement came in that he'd be taking part in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And that brought into question just what this program would look like at the SRO America round at Circuit of the Americas, which happens to be on the same weekend. So Max obviously will not be available. But speaking to Fred, the plan is for Wright to be there in some capacity. Who his co-driver is going to be, we don't know at this time. But the good news is we will see Fred continuing with this program. We will see Wright. And then he said we look forward to welcoming Max back to the program when we get to the season finale at Indianapolis. But to say the least, this has been a very successful foray into GT3 racing all across the board for both Fred, who's also quite new to GT3 racing, and Max Root as well.
Thanks, Ryan. And we just saw Ryan DL go a little wide at the exit of turn 7. It's an easy place to do it. We actually saw in the GT4 race earlier, someone ran wide and drove off the track. They bounced so hard it shut the car off. It put it into a limp mode. So this is not something you want to do all the time, but just a little bit too much speed there, Kevin.
Yeah, it's the curbs are so rough here that sometimes you use a little bit too much and the car kind of slides out. So that definitely happens. And believe it or not, my car earlier this week, a very similar situation where I was on the really rough curbs and my car shut off because of the kill switch. So definitely it happens, and I was very fortunate for it not to happen in a race. It was just a practice session.
So there's Colin Brown for DXDT Racing with the CrowdStrike AWS colors on the side of that. The strategy yesterday with the AM driver starting, the pro driver jumping in, you kind of want to get the AM driver in as soon as possible when that pit window opens. Today, you're going to try to leave them in for as long as possible to try to elongate the time that they're running fast laps.
Yeah, generally the kind of pro drivers are a little bit faster than the AM drivers, and kind of you want to leave them in as long as you can to try to get to the finish first. But you can also use, if your AM driver is a little bit better than the other AM drivers, then maybe you can also use that to your advantage for when they get in the car.
So there again is the 33. That's Ward in that car, and Baptista's been chasing him down but unable to get by. How frustrating is this as a driver to maybe have a car that is pulling you a little bit on the straights here? There's a lot of straights at Road America, so is this a car difference, or is this just not having quite enough pace to get by him just yet?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's tough to tell because these cars are really closely matched, and it's very little details that'll kind of change the difference between the cars. So it looks like the Ferrari's a little bit faster kind of entering the turn, and then the Mercedes is better getting off the turn, and it's kind of this accordion effect. It goes all the way around, and as a driver, you have to kind of find where your advantage is slightly better than their disadvantage, and that's where you can maybe make a move later on.
I think yesterday Siege and I talked about Road America, and the carousel in particular and the kink are some pretty fast corners that sort of put you through some G-load in some of these faster cars. What kind of training goes into driving one of these cars? Obviously, every time you step up into a faster category of race car, those loads get higher and higher. So is there anything that you do in particular to keep yourself fit inside that race car?
Well, fortunately, the car that I drive is mostly street-based, so its G-forces aren't as extreme as these GT3 cars, but definitely after a 3-race weekend, I'm still a little sore from the really high G turns, but I don't do anything very specific. I just mostly do a lot of cardio because the heart rate's up for the whole time you're on track.
Right, that's actually, you know what's interesting, you mentioned the heart rate thing. We kind of bring in our sim racing tie a little bit here too. The racing is a really intense sport, obviously, and one of the interesting things, we had one of the guys in one of our sim racing leagues track his heart rate over the course of a sim race, same thing. So let's tie in sim racing here a little bit. You don't get the physical wear that you might get in the car, but you certainly get the same mental wear and tear of the stress of putting yourselves in pretty intense situations.
That's right, and especially when the competition is really competitive and you're fighting for every inch on even a virtual track. I think the adrenaline that you get is very similar to what you get on a real track like Road America.
And we had obviously earlier this year for SRO Corsa Competizione, we had GT Rivals with a lot of SRO America drivers in it from all over the globe, and you participated in that a little bit as well, had some success there. So how much of that carries over? I mean, everyone at home kind of wishes they were in this position. And there's Father Jeff Brown right there. He's one of the engineers on this team. But let's go back to the esports thing. How much of that transfers, or is there still a lot to learn when you jump in? And how much can you really take away from a sim racing environment to the real racetrack?
Well, I mean, I think the best thing that you can take away from sim racing is the mental side of kind of the focus that you need to kind of put down fast laps consistently, not make mistakes, and even strategize for how you're going to pass cars. A lot of that stuff, you don't need to be in a real car and risking or kind of driving the cars fast to get that practice. You can do that definitely with virtual racing, and when you get here in a real car, use those exact same skills.
And now a bit of a fight tightening up. This will be for second overall. Max Root at the front of this fight. That's for second. Behind him, Ryan DL in third. Colin Brown in fourth. So the DXDT duo chasing down P2 here. Still relatively early in the race. A lot of time left. How much are you willing to push this early, or is this a situation where you're going to be a lot more patient than you would be later in the race?
Well, I mean, I think it really comes down to what the car feels like. If you're noticing the car in front of you is really struggling with the tires and your car feels great, then kind of the first thing you're going to do is to keep pushing and try to make that car in front of you use up more of its tires, because that'll make it easier for you to get by. But if you're already kind of pushing to the limit, you have to try not to let it get into your head, and you have to still keep running your line and let the race come to you.
Looking back at P1TS, we've got Colin Brown's fastest sector is Sector 2, and we take a look at the sector times here in comparison to Trent Hinman. He is the second fastest driver out there on the racetrack right now, just about 3/10 in terms of speed behind him. But look at that middle sector. He's quicker than Trent Hinman by 2/10. That's not insignificant.
No, that's not insignificant, and it may play a little bit into where the cars are making speed, because Sector 2 has the carousel and the kink in it, so that tells me that the Mercedes might have a little bit better downforce through the high-speed section of the track.
And I think one of the things that surprised me when we were discussing the differences in the cars, and again, these cars are have what's called balance of performance to keep them all generally on the same level of performance. However, there are differences between how they drive, and I would have thought this big Mercedes with this 6.2-liter V8 in it that thunders the ground when you go by, you'd think that this thing would be a rocket ship in a straight line, and it's not slow by any stretch. But it's also, it seems like the top end of the straightaways, it sort of loses a little bit of that grunt compared to some of the other cars. So I think here at Road America, it might not be the best car at the ends of the straights, but in the corners, it carries a lot more speed than some of the other cars out there.
Yeah, that's right. And when the kind of manufacturers develop these cars, they kind of develop some things. They maybe prioritize high-speed grip or low-speed grip or power or braking, and kind of the target is to make the lap times the same, but it's really left up to the manufacturers for exactly how they arrive there. So we see some of that at a track like Road America, where there's lots of high-speed turns, long brake zones, and some tight twisty sections as well. It's really a neat track to try to see all those variables all in the same lap.
So climbing up the hill, we're a little while into this race. Again, this is a 90-minute adventure, so we're just about 20 minutes in. And the pit window will open at the 45th minute. Let's talk a little bit about those GT2 cars we mentioned earlier. We talked about the differences, but their race also ends 40 minutes into this one. So they're about halfway through already. So that's sort of an interesting dynamic, as some of these cars, Jason Bell in the 10th place spot down at the bottom of the order, he's one of those drivers. You're basically, you just pull off and you're done, and everybody else continues to race. That's an interesting dynamic, I think.
Right. The GT2 cars, basically, these crews don't have enough people to do the kind of fuel stops. So that's, I think, about as long as they can run on a tank of fuel. And that maybe tells you a little bit how much horsepower they have. But in the end, it's sort of just a sprint race within an endurance race.
And the second place car, Max Root, starting to get run down here a little bit. Ryan DL was just about a tenth off of him last time, but their pace is essentially starting to match between second, third, and fourth in overall right now. And again, DL continues to lead. Now, one of the other discussions was that the 04, Colin Brown and George Kurtz, they were leading the Pro-Am standings coming into Road America by 1 point. And after yesterday's event, that sort of turned around a little bit. So there's still a points battle on the line. We've got a couple more races. Circuit of the Americas coming up, and then Indianapolis to end out the season. So it is very important that Colin Brown and George Kurtz recoup some of those points that they lost yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. And it's sort of, you don't want to start counting points too early, because you never know what can happen. But at the same time, every point that you can gain on track is one less that you have to gain later. So definitely the season's coming to an end somewhat soon, so I'm sure it's on the mind.
And you see CrowdStrike fastest lap to Trent Hinman with a 2:07.462. That's pretty quick as he continues to drive away. It's a 6.3 second gap back to Max Root in second place. Again, Blackstock and Hinman, they're both really solid drivers. They're a silver category car, so they're not necessarily racing directly against the DXTT cars, but they have been really solid right from the drop of the green flag at the beginning of the season, and they've continued to have success here at Road America.
Yeah, that's right, and it really seems like they've got this Acura NSX really figured out. They seem to be competitive no matter which track they go to, and especially Sonoma and Road America are two completely different types of tracks. So that tells you that they really have a handle on this car.
Yeah, Sonoma, a really tight, twisty track in the Napa Valley of California, and this racetrack up in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, is very different in many ways, as you alluded to. Long straights, very tight point-and-shoot corners, I would call this place, and not so many sweeping corners. The interesting thing about this, we were talking with CJ yesterday, this racetrack is very narrow at speed, 32 feet wide, and the reason why it's 32 feet wide is when it was paved originally back in 1955, a standard road grader was 16 feet. They made 2 passes, called it a day, and that's why it's as narrow as it is in a lot of places on the racetrack.
Yeah, and trust me, it feels narrow everywhere you drive around this track. This track commands a lot of respect for that, because it's so narrow, and especially when you're side by side with another car, or maybe even 3 cars wide, it doesn't leave you a lot of room out there.
No, there's Ryan DL trying to chase down Max Root. Last time by, again, was just a little bit off of running down Root. Colin Brown continues to run right behind in 4th overall. Then Ward in behind, running a little bit farther off pace. Rodrigo Baptista, though, last time by was 0.3 faster than the silver Mercedes in 5th place, so we could see a battle start to heat up there. But up front, Hinman continues to run some of the fastest laps on the racetrack at 2:08.3 last time, still the quickest driver out there. And again, Hinman and Blackstock, a pretty hard combo to beat. But again, Max Root, again, that car is the Wright Motorsports car. Fred Pordad will be jumping in that car in a little bit, and both bronze-rated drivers. So they're at sort of, in one aspect, they're at a disadvantage because both the drivers are bronze-rated, but then you go to the second part of the race, and they're basically on equal footing with everybody else.
That's right, and sort of just makes the beginning of the race, of this race, a little bit harder. And in the end, you still never know what's going to happen.
About an hour and 4 minutes left in this race. There is the fight for fifth place.
Let's keep the tire conversation going as well. I talked to the team briefly to see what Rodrigo Baptista was dealing with, and evidently their tire pressures have really skyrocketed, leaving him with a race car that doesn't handle very well. And I mentioned the fact that we had noticed the Ferrari bouncing a little bit more than the other cars out on track, and they believe that bouncing actually has contributed to those high tire pressures. So definitely an issue that they're going to have to try and address during their pit stop before Martin Fuentes takes the wheel.
Thanks, Ryan. And this is heating up now. The 33 feeling the pressure from behind. How much mirror driving can you do at a place like this? You mentioned long straightaways. So how much of that time on the straight for you and your Civic Si is spent looking out the windshield, and how much is spent looking in the mirror?
I mean, the mirror is more of a reference. The main focus is out the windshield, and you use a lot of peripheral vision to kind of see what's happening in the mirror, and you basically have to, the first couple of laps that a car is behind you, you can sort of see where they might be faster than you, and you kind of pay more attention later on in those areas. But if you're faster than another car in one section of the track, then you might not even check the mirror for a little while.
And taking a look here, I wanted to kind of jump down and have a look here at the gap to Colin Brown, who we're following right now. And the white line is going to be the driver trailing. That's that silver 33 that you're seeing. You can see on the screen here the number of seconds is the y-axis, and we can sort of follow along with how much those cars are losing. And you can see just a very steady decline over the last couple laps, which tells me that 33 just doesn't quite have the pace to go up there and run Colin Brown down.
That's right, and you notice the orange and blue lines are staying very, very close, so they're just matching their lap times right now as well.
Yeah, the orange, I believe, is our secondary car. That would be Ryan DL in that machine. Back live there's one of those GT2 Porsches in front of, I believe, that is Issa in the other Ferrari that's out there. That would be the, I think that's the 311 car that is entered. It is the 31 car on the timing and scoring. That's the TR3 Racing car. Mark Issa, a bronze-rated driver with Issa Law Firm on board that car. So chasing down one of those GT2s. And this is going to be an interesting dynamic. We talked about the differences between these cars. It seems like this Ferrari is unable to get by the Porsche. It's faster on the straights, the Porsche is, versus the Ferrari. But the Ferrari is catching him in these twisty sections. That's got to be a little annoying. I think the Porsche's going to pull over, let him by.
Yeah, I think the Porsche was really generous there. He flashed the headlights to say you're welcome, I believe, and then the Ferrari's off to chase down the next car.
And up the hill towards turn 13. That's another fast section, kind of a blind crest over that corner. You track all the way out, and there's actually sort of an access road there, and it gives you a little extra racetrack to use up on corner exit.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of it as an access road. It seems like it's the racetrack to me.
That's all the drivers ever see is racetrack. If it's paved, they're going to use it.
That's right.
We're going back to what we were talking about in turn 1 and 5. Drivers really exploring the outer limits of that. I consider the curbing part of the racing surface. They just made the curbing 20 feet wide here, so fair game. Now, an hour left here. There's Ryan Gates for 311 RS Motorsport. That is, again, the GT2 category car. And these are such cool machines. These things will do better than 180 into turn 1. And we were standing in the paddock area down by the turn 1 side. It's the only car you can see hit the brakes from that vantage point, because all the other cars are braking way later because they're not going as fast. The GT2s have to brake way sooner.
That's right. It's kind of the speed itself, and the lack of downforce means that they have to brake way earlier. So it's really a treat to get to see one of those cars go by, because it's like a rocket ship on wheels.
Well, going back to the braking, earlier in the TC race that you were watching right here on the CrowdStrike Racing YouTube channel, or I should say the CrowdStrike Racing website, we watched you battle some Mini Coopers. And it's not a different category, but those are very different cars versus your Civic Si. They're a lot smaller and lighter, and they were braking pretty deep and sort of being a nuisance to you on the opening couple laps.
Yeah, I mean, it's that kind of goes into some of the cars have advantages and disadvantages, and in the end, the lap time wasn't so different, but the way we did it was, and especially when we were really, really close together, the Mini was able to kind of brake really late, and I had to be very, very careful around them, and then I had to use my advantages in the high-speed Sector 2 part of the track, in the carousel and the kink, to try to get enough gap to where they couldn't do that anymore. And as soon as I was able to do that, then we kind of spread out, and I was able to chase down some of the cars ahead.
We continue to watch a 3-horse battle for second place overall. It's Max Root in the blue and white Porsche, then Ryan DL in the DXDT Racing 63. Colin Brown, CrowdStrike Mercedes in behind, another DXDT Racing car. And
today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Lamborghini.
I was just saying, they're so rudely interrupt me.
With
There's
Mercedes
Lamborghini.
AMG.
So
With
DL
Porsche.
and Brown, let's go back to yesterday's incident at the start of the race, because the 04 took a pretty heavy hit to the back of that car. How much repair was done to that? Was it all bodywork mostly, or was there anything else that was damaged?
I didn't get a chance to go over there and look at the full extent of the damage, but they were very fortunate to hit the tires instead of the actual concrete barriers. Generally, the tires are kind of slow the car down very gently, and it's most of the time that leaves you with some body damage, and there's some kind of under trays and some aero work that's on the back of the car that may have been damaged as well, but I'm sure that DXDT was able to kind of replace all those parts, and it seems like Colin has a really good car under him right now, so I don't think that that damage is affecting them today.
Continue to battle for 5th. That's Russell Ward and Rodrigo Baptista down into Canada corner, and one of the harder braking zones on the racetrack. Coming into, basically there's a little bit of a kink to the left coming into that corner. And for these cars, it's a kink to the left and then immediately on the brakes. And we see a lot of over-unders at corner exit here because of how tight the entrance to this corner is. But Ward tracks out wide in 13 and sets up turn 14. We're just about 10 or 12 minutes shy of the halfway point and also the pit sequence opening. And then we'll start seeing cars hit pit lane.
Yeah, that's right. So right now the tires are starting to feel pretty used up, so you're going to see a lot of the cars start to run a little bit wide on the exits, and the lap times are going to start falling just a little bit, maybe a few tenths at a time, and definitely getting new tires in the car is going to help once they do the driver change in the pit stop coming up.
Yeah, 4 Mr. Feelgoods on those cars, some new Pirellis on those machines. 93 Trent Hinman down into turn 5. You see the battle for second continues to get hotter and hotter with Root trailing them down the back straight. A lot of slipstream here maybe for these cars, and also for your cars, the TCA cars earlier. I'm sure that played a pretty big factor as well for someone in behind you.
Right. I mean, the draft is pretty big, and especially these GT3 cars with the giant wings, they punch a really big hole in the air, and when you're the car following another one, you're trying to fill up that space so that effectively the car in front of you is pulling you forward, and the closer you get, the more that effect happens.
And now through the carousel, turns 9 and 10. Under the Speedville Bridge and towards the kink again at high speed. We saw earlier Jeff Brown, who is an engineer for the DXDT Racing 04. And I want to go back to that a little bit and the family dynamic that plays out at racetracks, because so many of these people live their lives sort of on the road, jumping from event to event. What's the family dynamic for you? What's it been like? Are your parents big supporters? Are they going, oh, this is silly, and you're going to bring the trophy home to them and shut them up?
No, my family is very, very big into this, and in fact, my dad and my wife come to every race, and my dad's the guy on the other end of the radio talking to me during the race and kind of telling me about the lap times for the other cars and kind of helping me with some strategy, and then my wife is kind of handling all the social media and trying to make sure we have plenty of fancy pictures posted on Instagram and things like that. So it's a great team that we have, and we're also fortunate kind of to get some extended family in Operation Motorsport as well. So we have a couple of their members joining our team at the events as well, and trying to give back and give them a team atmosphere to join in, and with a common goal of trying to win these races.
And you've gotten your first win this weekend, and then your second win this weekend as well, then a second. So it's been a really good weekend for you here at Road America. And so, again, congratulations on that, by the way. It's always fun watching those TCA races because they get sort of physical up front, but you were able to just drive away from everybody and have your own little party out front the other day. So lots of pace. You're able to just drive away and pick up a trophy or two.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the race sometimes and kind of the cards that you're dealt. I think yesterday it looked like I won the race really easily, but there was a lot going on. There was traffic involved and some cars kind of having some issues during the race, and it seemed like every time that happened, it slowed the people behind me down, but didn't affect me at all. So I ended up winning yesterday's race very easily, but then today, in contrast, I never led the race once and was luckily battling for the lead at the end, but a completely different result from one day to the next.
Yeah, it's not easy to win races by any stretch, but you did a great job earlier this weekend. CrowdStrike and AWS help these guys get in their cars and go out and win races, as they can help you win in security as well. And here's a little bit on how CrowdStrike protects SRO.
When we first looked at the opportunity of working with CrowdStrike as a technical partner and as our security partner, we knew it would help us in this world that we live in today, but we didn't realize how much it would help us to be secure in a post-COVID environment, or as we have to exist today, as we all say, it's a new normal that we have to operate on. When we were very impressed with CrowdStrike, with the ability to quickly respond in seconds to threats, that's been a great aspect of our partnership.
Back live from Road America. 53 minutes to go. We're just shy of our 40-minute mark, which is going to lead us into the finish of the GT2, or I should say GT Sports Club race. And in that race right now, it's Issa out front in the 31 Ferrari that leads that fight, with Gates in behind by about 5.5 seconds. But they're going to pull off at the 40-minute mark, and then we're going to have pit stops for everybody else.
That's right, and at the pit stops, you're going to see kind of 3 different things happening all at the same time. There's going to be refueling of the cars. You're going to see 4 tires all changed at once, and then the drivers are going to swap as well. So it's a lot happening in a very short amount of time.
And the driver swaps especially, there's a lot that goes into those. You're basically unbuckling from your harness. You're also undoing the radio, and what else goes on in a driver swap situation, and how intense is that for a driver?
Well, believe it or not, they're really rehearsed. You kind of practice with your teammate, and you kind of get it down to a step-by-step process. A lot of times you have a very specific place that when you're in the car getting out that you want to put the belts so that the next driver knows exactly where they are so they can grab them quickly. You need to have a strategy on what things that you can disconnect as you're driving down pit lane, and you have to really pay attention to what the rules allow as well. So it's very complicated and intricate.
So there's a 31 leading in GT Sports Club right now. That is actually a GT3 spec car. The other cars in that group are all GT2 Porsche 911. The whole name for it is the Porsche 911 GT2 RSCS. That's a long name for a race car, but they like to be long-handed with those. The Germans like their numbers and letters together.
That's right. Yeah.
There's Ryan Gates, the 311 RS Motorsport team car. That driver right now is second. And behind Issa by a little. He's losing a little bit of time here, but this race essentially, I think, is white flagged for them, or at least this time or next time they'll be their last lap. So those got to be a lot of fun to drive. They sound so cool too.
Yeah, and I still I am amazed every time I see one of these drive by on the straightaways, because it just it's so fast in a straight line. These cars are amazing.
I was sitting in the media center the other day watching one of the practices, I believe, and one of these cars came by, and the media center, you get about 100 feet of view out the window of the racetrack, kind of right alongside the pit lane, and it's just bam, and it's gone. It's amazing. It's just a blur of color, and they're so fast, and they've got to be a lot more. I think they'll probably be a little bit more dynamic to drive than a GT3 spec car as well, with all that extra horsepower and so much less downforce. So a lot more physical maybe to drive than a GT3 car, but sometimes having those creature comforts is nice.
That's right, and it's definitely difficult to drive these cars because the power it's easy to spin the tires and maybe make the car sideways, but it seems like these guys are doing a great job.
So with finish coming to the checkers here for the GT Sports Club cars, up the hill comes Issa in the Ferrari, and checkered flag for GT Sports Club at the 40-minute mark. And second place in behind is going to be the trailing Gates machine, the 311 RS car. And there's a race control notification for that checkered flag. And now within 5 minutes, we're going to open up the pits for the GT3 spec GT World Challenge America cars. And then it's going to get really interesting because I think we sort of know where the pros are going to stack up here. Once you put the AMs in the cars, it's going to shake things up a little bit. And maybe Trent Hinman, when he relinquishes the car to Shelby Blackstock, they might have a hiccup on the pit stop. And that could bring Ryan DL and Colin Brown, they're going to turn their drivers over to David Askew and George Kurtz. And that could see a very different race in the next half.
Right. There's a lot of variables that the pit stop adds to the race. There's pit speed limit. There's the many things that you can kind of, as a driver, make a mistake and give yourself a penalty. So there's that, and then I'm sure that even though everybody's kind of targeting the same amount of time in pits, there's some people are going to do a better job than others, and you might see some positions exchanged.
Yeah, we could see some position swap a little bit. I know there was a mistake yesterday for pit stop on one of the cars. They weren't able, or didn't end up losing any time. I think it was Baptista that lost some time in the pit sequence, but ultimately continued to lead in that
Today's
category.
coverage is brought to you in partnership with AWS, with CrowdStrike, and with Optima Batteries.
So I wanted to go back a little bit, and we talked about GT2, but let's talk a little bit about what GT3 racing is and why it's so popular and why it's the top class here in SRO America.
Well, I mean, GT3 are based on, kind of loosely based on road going, to some extent, supercars. I mean, we see the Acura NSX here, and essentially they build these cars by kind of the chassis starts as it would if it was going to be a street car, and then it's pulled off the line and modified, and then they kind of build it to achieve a very specific lap time, and then the series kind of makes sure that it's equivalent to the pre-existing GT3 cars, and then that's kind of how they're born. But they generally have a lot more downforce and, believe it or not, most of the time less power than their kind of street-going counterparts.
Yeah, I think actually the Mercedes in this case doesn't actually share the same motor from the street-going car. I think it's a bigger engine, I think, than the street car now has. But a lot of the cars do share a similar engine. I know in your category, you've got you race a TCA car. Maybe explain a little bit about what TCA race car is and how it's different from a GT3 spec car.
Yeah, I mean, the GT3 cars are kind of modified for all speed and adjustability, and in contrast, the car that I race is probably 90% street car, and the 10% that's not street car is all the parts that are not installed, such as the interior and sound deadening and a lot of that stuff, and the rest is just safety equipment and a little bit stiffer suspension and some better brakes, and other than that, it's basically a street car.
You know what was so interesting to me to learn about TCA cars is that the engine and transmission of those cars is essentially stock. So that's a pretty big difference from a lot of race cars in any category that you look at. So you really get to compare a Honda Civic versus a Hyundai Veloster versus a Mini Cooper. You really get to sort of compare those cars in terms of their dynamics. But GT3 racing, definitely a lot more adjustability built into these cars, a lot more configuration. And also, let's talk about DXDT Racing specifically. This the 63, the leading black Mercedes here, that is a brand new car, only about a week old.
Yeah, that's right. I think Mercedes had some updates to the Mercedes GT3 car, and it seems like just listening to Ryan kind of describe this car, it feels like a complete different car on track. So they must have done a lot of work to try to improve the performance.
So with 45:51 on the clock here, we should see the pit window open. Now the question is, will Trent Hinman pass the pit entry before that window will open? But I would say that they're probably not going to pit now. They'll probably wait until the end of that window to make that stop.
Yeah, I mean, both Trent and Shelby are very good drivers, so I think they have the option to do kind of pit whenever they feel like it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they pit now or wait till later.
And for Max Root and his teammate will be Fred Pordad. Again, they're AM drivers in comparison to the silver team of Hinman and Blackstock. So they it doesn't really matter for them either. But I would say for the third and fourth place cars, the DXDT cars, yeah, you're going to leave your pros in as long as possible just to maximize the speed of that car. And then we'll have it'll be David Askew and George Kurtz jumping in that for the remaining part of this race. And so, again, 45-minute will open. There it is, the pit window open now. And at the 55th minute, it'll close. So you have 10 minutes to come down, get your service done, and get back out. And there is a minimum time on pit lane. Maybe explain that just a little bit and exactly how that works.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with the pit open window, this track is very long, and because the laps are over 2 minutes, you only really get about 3 chances to pit. So that's the kind of important thing you have to pay attention to. And then once your pit stop, once you're kind of committed to a pit stop, you're really targeting no quicker than 91 seconds. And it's very specific because they're trying to make all the cars be in pit lane for the same amount of time to try to keep the racing really close on track.
I believe it's 86 seconds for the GT World Challenge. I think that's GT4 Sprint X. So 86 seconds for pit lane. And I think you get 46 from pit in to pit out just rolling through. So that leaves you essentially 40 seconds in the box is what you essentially have to stay. And the idea is that you want to be waiting for the timer. You don't want to still be buckling up the driver and still fueling the car. You want to be done with that stop by that 40th second so you can just turn them loose and go.
That's right. So you're basically trying to get all the work on the car done, the driver change, the fuel in the car, and you wait for the time to count down, and then you drive out of pit lane kind of on the pit speed limit, and then that should add up to that 86 seconds.
And going back to the Pro-Am driver lineup here a little bit, the reason why Colin is classified as a Pro and George Kurtz is an AM, Colin's been racing for a really long time. He's a pretty young guy, but he's been racing in this series and another racing series quite a bit. I know he's got some NASCAR truck experience as well. That's sort of where I first heard his name back in 2007 or whatever it was. But George Kurtz, this is only his second year of GT3 racing, so that, again, that's the difference there. Is see the 33 and 1 continue to chase each other for fifth. We have kind of two distinct groupings of cars, really second through fourth. That's Root, DL, and Brown, and then Ward and Baptista are in their own little fight here for P5.
Yeah, the cars are a little bit spread out, which is easy to do on the track like Road America, where the straightaway, the track's just very, very big. If you ever get a chance to come out here and kind of walk around this facility, it's kind of like a park. I mean, it's got trails, it's got all kinds of things where you can go and look around, and it's really interesting. Up as we see the first pit stop.
And a split strategy here by the Windward car. They're going to hit pit lane right now, where Baptiste is going to go an extra lap, and that could flip-flop these cars here, Kevin. So we'll see how this strategy plays out.
Yeah, that's right. I think they're trying to kind of throw off the other teams a little bit, I believe.
Yeah, so it'll be Indy Janji getting in this car and going to the end of the race with about 40 minutes left. And Baptista is going to be the Ferrari that just went by. There he is, and he's going to be turning over to his teammate, which again is going to be the Squadra Corsa teammate of Martin Fuentes will jump in that car. So Squadra Corsa again had a great showing at Sonoma, and so far today they've been sort of buried mid-pack, but with this pit stop and this driver change, we could see something different.
Set to replace Russell Ward behind the wheel of this Mercedes-AMG GT3. The older generation, not the Evo. Keep in mind that Indy was the pole sitter for race 1 of the weekend yesterday. Regarding the strategy here on pit lane, Martin Fuentes only recently just got suited up, so they were not planning on coming in early in this window. One benefit, though, is the car that they were stuck behind is this one, so they should have some clean air for that Ferrari following this pit stop. Speaking of the pit stop, very clean so far, coming around to make the change here on the right rear. Fuel disengaged, down off the jacks. The car is fired up and they send it. Maybe a slight delay, you tell me.
Well, looked pretty good to me. He's going to pull away here. Now, where is the one car, and when's it going to pit here, Kevin? Is this smart to stay out maybe a few more laps, or is it smart just to go right now and retaliate with the strategy call here?
Well, I mean, I think if you think you have a little bit of lap time left in the car, and now that you're not behind a car, if you think that you can go faster now than you were when you were behind him, then you might actually be able to jump him in pit lane. So I think they may stay out for one more lap before they pit, but let's see when they come around.
Second, third, and fourth cross the line now. Root, DL, and Colin Brown all line astern here with Hinman 12 seconds up the road. He'll have to turn over the car to Shelby Blackstock at some point. And I would say a much better race today for the DXTT racing cars. Third and fourth, and they haven't found the gravel trap yet, so that's always good. We were so disappointed yesterday when they took the green, and we were going, oh, watch the DXTT cars. So then down in turn one, ended up in the gravel. So that was not fun yesterday. So far, it's been a good day for them as they continue to run inside the top 5. There's Baptista, stays out another lap, little wide in turn 1. Gathers it back up on course, but we'll have to turn over to Martin Fuentes here soon.
Right, and you can see based on how wide he went through the exit, he's really pushing right now. He's really trying to use this time with no cars in front of him to his advantage and try to maybe jump ahead of the car that was in front of him when he comes out of pit lane.
And let's talk a little bit about tire wear. How much does that play into these cars, and at this racetrack in particular? A lot of load on these tires. So when you're talking about this deep in a race, at what point do you have to come in and get tires just because you're burning them up?
Well, I mean, definitely these tires can last this long at a track like Road America with the long straights. The long straights effectively are cooling the tire down, so we don't have such huge concerns with tire wear at Road America, not like we did at Sonoma, where there's almost no straightaways and it's a turn after turn after turn. So I think that these drivers, since this is the pros, they're definitely able to kind of run the fast laps without really abusing the tires
and getting the most speed out of it as possible without tearing up the equipment as well. So there's Hinman coming up the hill through Bill Mitchell Bend into turn 14, the final turn on this course. And you mentioned earlier how much it's like a park. And again, I'm local to Watkins Glen, so I'm familiar with racetracks that are sort of from this era where they're sort of laid on top of the land and not cut through it. And Watkins Glen is also a beautiful racetrack, but I thought that was my favorite track. I came here and I go, this is it. This is the environment here is just awesome. It took a little bit of a tour on I think it was Thursday night, and it was just amazing how much like I'm from the Finger Lakes region of New York, how much like a Finger Lake campsite it is. I mean, there's just fire pits and trees everywhere, and there's just not a track like it. And there is Colin Brown hitting pit lane, and he's going to trade out for George Kurtz here.
That's right. It's I was curious who was going to pit first in that grouping in second, third, and fourth. So let's see if they can execute this pit stop.
And there's Baptista coming in as well, and this is going to change out for Martin Fuentes. And again, the battle that we're watching with this car is the one with the 33 now driven by Indy Donji as they come on through to finish up their sequence. And you can see the GT Sports Club cars pull over. Their race has been over for a little while now. Here's Colin Brown into the pits.
Right you are. That is the change that's going to be happening here shortly. Martin Fuentes waiting patiently to get behind the wheel of that car. The Ferrari coming in. He'll have to come around the CrowdStrike Mercedes to do so. It doesn't seem to impede his progress too much. Further up pit lane, indeed, as we really would anticipate, both Wright and Racer's Edge getting ready to go on their pit stops. Looking pretty clean so far for the TR3 bunch. A crucial pit stop here, as you highlighted. A chance perhaps to make that jump of position past the Windward team if they can do this smoothly. Colin Brown has been released. He heads down the pit lane, ready to rejoin the fight. And we'll have a flurry of action here shortly when the rest of the cars make their way to pit lane here next lap.
So Colin Brown free and clear of the pit lane, and I should see now it's George Kurtz in that car. Colin Brown is over the pit wall and done racing for the weekend. He did a good job with that car, kept it inside the top 5. Now Kurtz takes over. We'll take it to the last 37 minutes of racing, and now Baptista trades over to Martin Fuentes, and here comes the 33 Windward Racing car at full speed, full tilt, 170 plus miles an hour, and through the Ferrari it goes, and that did not work, the overcut strategy, and it looks like Indy Donji will keep the Windward car out front.
That's right. It looks like the Ferrari may have had a little bit of struggles with the wheel guns in the pits, so I think they actually lost time while doing their stops. So I think that's why they ended up staying behind the Mercedes.
Here's Trent Hinman into the pits now. We'll turn it over to Shelby Blackstock, and Shelby was raced TCR and actually still is racing TCR over in another series, so he's got a little bit of everything experience under his belt. There again is the 04, now driven by George Kurtz through turn 7 into hurry downs, and hurry down you will, because you got to get those tires hot. You don't have the advantage of getting able to warm up your tires and brakes, although the brakes all be nice and toasty, but the tires got to get them to workable temp by the time you get to the first hard braking zone.
Yeah, they fortunately get to start out with a little bit of temperature. They generally have the tire warmers on the tires before the pit, but they're not in there all the way up until the point they put them on the car. So you still have to be careful when you go out of pit lane.
Really at Sonoma, and speaking to both Trent and Shelby yesterday, having a nice, clean, trouble-free run throughout the day in race number 1. That was really cathartic for this team. They were ready to put that disappointment behind them. Looking really, really smooth so far. Little trouble disengaging the fuel probe, however, but because they're holding the car, I don't think it cost them. Already on the rev limiter, there goes Shelby Blackstock. In behind them still is the pit stop for Wright Motorsports. It looks like a bit of a delay getting Fred Pourdad belted in. That might be costly, we shall see.
right now. It looks like Poor Dad will jump in that car, pull out right in front of, there'll be David Askew in the 63, and they're going to pull out right here. And there in behind is George Kurtz flying down the front straight, and he'll rejoin this battle here with a head of steam into turn 1.
Yeah, I think once they go through turn 1 here, they're going to all be grouped together just in the same order as they were before the pit stop. And it looks like George lost a little bit of time compared to where Colin was on track, but he didn't lose much. So I think they're still going to have a battle out there.
And we were talking briefly about tire warmers, and for those that don't know, it's basically like a heated blanket that you wrap around the tire to kind of give it some heat, because racing tires work best when they're hot and sticky.
That's right, and there's a lot of science to it, and I think some of the teams are even using these things that look like ovens now and kind of torpedo heaters, and they try to warm up the whole wheel, and there's a crazy science to it. So it definitely helps the performance when you leave pit lane, that's for sure.
Yeah, it seems like there's a workable temperature for tires where hot's okay, but if you get too hot, then they start getting slippery. There's it's fancy science and chemistry that I don't understand, but it's witchcraft and wizardry as far as I'm concerned. But these drivers know exactly where that is and when they've overheated them or when they're not hot enough. And either extreme is not very fun. You'll tend to have a lot of understeer with cold tires and maybe a lot of oversteer with overly hot tires. So with half an hour left, now you got to get in your zone and go. And Poor Dad's going to have to hold off David Askew. And George Kurtz in behind. We'll keep an eye on their lap times and see if this will close up. But let me tell you, Askew's close enough to have a run here if he can just use a slipstream down this straight and in the front.
Right, I think he's already kind of looking out to the inside there, so he's already thinking about it, but I think he needs to be just a little bit closer.
And remember to keep your eye on the clock here as we get down to the very end of this thing. Askew feeling the pressure with 30 minutes left on the clock. And how much does your crew in your TC series, how much are they in your ear telling you how much time is left, and how much do you just kind of leave it up to yourself and just drive until they tell you to stop?
For the most part, we try to keep the radio pretty quiet because it's easily to get distracted when you're out there kind of pushing the car to the limit. But we kind of have a plan for kind of important information as it comes up. So especially for the last 10 minutes of the race, or if some faster traffic is coming behind, or things like that, it really helps kind of know what's outside of your vision.
Well, I can tell you, David Askew's all over the back of Fred Poor Dad through turn number 1, now into turn 3, hard on the brakes, and it seems like Askew's getting deeper on the brakes than Poor Dad right now, and that's sort of a bravery thing in these cars. They have ABS, and they will stop on a dime, but you got to be really, really brave to wait that long to hit the brake pedal.
Yeah, the ABS is really good, and you can rely on it pretty heavily, but it can't rewrite physics, so there is a limit. But you can see that it looks like the Porsche is kind of holding up the two DXDT cars a little bit as it's allowed George to really close up as well.
Yeah, I think some of the drivers wished it could bend physics around a little bit and they could get on the brakes a little bit later. But Askew and Kurtz now are really hounding the Poor Dad machine as he comes out of turn 7 into 8, and now the hurry down section here. So onto the brakes again, and you're going to click down a couple of gears. Talk about the gearboxes in these cars are pretty fancy, a little bit different than what you got in your TCA car.
Yeah, that's right. The gearbox in my car is just a standard kind of stick shift transmission, but all the GT3 cars are actually using a paddle shift, and it may be a little bit similar if you've seen these in some road cars as well, but these gearboxes are much stronger and they can shift a lot faster and a lot harder than what you see in a road car.
Well, getting really tight now. George Kurtz got a great run through the kink, going to carry all that speed down towards Canada Corner. They call this section Kettle Bottoms into Canada Corner, the north end of the course, and Kurtz putting pressure on Askew. And this is, again, teammates battling here, and they tangled yesterday at the start of the race, but there's a lot of mutual respect between teammates, obviously. But in the heat of battle, how much focus is on just racing and how much is on, hey, that's my teammate, maybe I should cut him a break?
Well, I mean, I think in general, you try to treat every car on the track the same. You try to give a lot of respect and some room for them to race. So as long as you're doing that, it doesn't matter if the car ahead of you is a teammate or not. But you definitely, when the car ahead of you is a teammate, you kind of, it's in the back of your mind. So you don't that's the last car that you want to run into, even if it's an accident.
And you see there's David Askew popping out of line and sort of offsetting to drivers right into the braking zone. That's kind of sort of a distraction tactic, because all you're trying to do is get poor dad to look up in the mirror and maybe miss a crucial braking point marker, maybe overshoot by 10 feet, and that'll be enough to make him make a mistake. So offsetting, flashing the headlights is something we saw yesterday. A lot of different methods you can use to distract the driver in front.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of it is trying to be unpredictable and making the driver ahead of you try to pay more attention in his mirrors to try to figure out what you're doing. And if you do that, maybe you can force them into a mistake. But if you're David Askew, you'll have to be careful, because George is right behind you. And if you do too much of that stuff, it may give an opportunity for the car behind you to pass.
Right. If you enter a corner, again, you want to kind of arc them as wide as possible on corner entry. So if you're entering on the inside of the track, you're going to wash out wide and give the driver behind you an opportunity to do what's called an over-under. Here's Kurtz late on the brakes, doing the same thing to the teammate here, and Askew gives him the line, and that was crucial there, as actually he's going to let him on by. So Kurtz goes through, and I think that was Askew going, okay, I think you're a little bit faster, we're going to let you go on through, or maybe let Kurtz do the dirty work and get by poor dad here.
Yeah, I think David was really generous there. It seemed like George wanted by for sure, as you see him flashing the lights. So I think he's got his sights on poor dad very, very aggressively. So he gets a great run through the kinks, so he might be able to make something happen in Canada Corner.
He's got a great run here. He's going to offset to drivers right. Poor dad goes to protect, but Kurtz late on the brakes, not going to stick the nose in there too late and too far. But Kurtz is on a mission right now, and why? Because that second place in front of him, that's a silver trophy right there if he can get by that number 20 car. So, and actually that was also for the lead in GT3 Pro-Am between those teammates. So Fuentes is way back now in 6th overall. So Kurtz is now in front of his teammate for 1st in Pro-Am, and now 3rd fighting for 2nd in the overall order.
Yeah, it definitely looks like George has a really good car under him, and you can tell that he's really confident right now. So I would look to see this battle to continue to heat up as the race goes on.
And look who's coming. That's Indy Donji in behind in the number 33 Windward Racing car, kind of creeping up in the background. Have a look at the lap times the last time through here. This is really interesting. With all this fighting and battling that was going on, take a look at the lap times where the cursor is here. 2:10 for Blackstock, 2:12 for Poor Dad. How about a 2:11.7 for Kurtz, 2:12.5, but for Indy Donji, a 2:07.8. Gained 5 seconds on that group of cars that time through. And now we're going to have a race on our hands as we head down towards turn number 5. Here comes Kurtz, has a look at Poor Dad, and behind Askew now defending from Indy Donji into the braking zone way late, and Donji slips and slides in the ABS and gets on through. Crossover here for Askew as he runs up the hill to 6.
Yeah, that was a really aggressive move into the brake zone there, but fortunately no one made any contact, and yeah, this battle's going to get heated up really quick.
That was optimistic, but he made it stick. To his credit, that was a deep dive. Here comes Kurtz, going to try to do the same. Backs out, but Donji is flying right now, and I think this is going to get very difficult for Poor Dad to hold off both of these cars.
Yeah, and definitely if you're George right now, the main focus is to get ahead of the Porsche, but you also have to realize that this silver Mercedes behind you, you don't want it to kind of mess up your race, so it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out.
Through the kink now. Poor Dad Kurtz that'll be Donji in what is now 4th place overall. Then behind, that's David Askew, and here comes Kurtz with another great run through the kink. Again, offset to the right. Here comes Donji with a look up the inside into Canada Corner. Going to back out again, and you see Poor Dad chasing Kurtz over to driver's right just to protect him from making that move.
Yeah, I think that was George is losing a little time to the Porsche in front, and I think that's because he is watching kind of the silver car behind him a little bit. So it's definitely a pretty tight battle right here.
And actually, this is a great comparison between the two Mercedes. The 04 of George Kurtz driving a Mercedes with the new Evo kit on it, which has a redesigned front bumper. It's got some other optimizations in other places. The main difference you can tell is from the grille, much wider mouth on the 04 CrowdStrike AWS car. Now the run down the front straight. Here comes Donji to the inside. Going to have a look, jump on the brakes. Kurtz will not let him get on by, though, and they'll run through that 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th all in line through turn 1. It's a race now.
Yeah, and definitely turn one's a really hard place to make a pass happen, as we see more passing attempts here in turn 3. So it's definitely, it seems like every break zone there's cars picking out and trying to find a way by.
Remember, Donji is a silver rated driver, so got a lot of experience in this car and in this category of racing. And look at them all nose to tail down the backstretch. And here comes Donji down the inside, going to do the same thing he did to the other DXDT car a lap ago, and he's through. So that was for third position overall, but George Kurtz retains the lead in the Pro-Am race, which is the important one, the trophy that they're fighting for.
Yeah, I think it looked like George broke just a little bit earlier because I think the silver car was maybe slowing him down because he was kind of trying to have to pay too much attention to it. So in the end, I think George lost less time by letting him by than he would have if he tried to keep him behind him.
And now Donji gets to work over Fred Portad, and again, this is an AM versus a silver driver, so bronze versus silver as they head through the carousel. Now George Kurtz going to try to stay tucked right up underneath the rear wing of the silver Mercedes because a door will open, and George Kurtz wants to be the second one through.
That's right. If depending on how the silver Mercedes, it looks like he's going to get by. But if you're George, you sort of want to take advantage of any kind of loss of speed that the Porsche has to deal with because he's being passed.
Oh, Portad defensive line into Canada corner. Donji sees that, will back out, maybe try to do an over-under at the exit of Canada corner. And they've been carrying so much speed. I think that's where Portad is struggling right now, is through that kink. It seems like everybody gets a run on him, but he does such a great job defending that no one's able to get by him there. Now Donji chases him back to the right into the final corner. Dive on the brakes, backs out a little too late. Got to have some overlap before he goes side by side into the corner.
That's right, and definitely there's a lot of aggressive moves happening right now, but there's also a lot of respect. You can see that the cars are not trying to lean into each other and things like that, so it's definitely challenging when the track's this narrow and you're going this fast.
Into turn number 1 here is Donji going to have another look, just poking out to the right a little bit, tucks back in now for turn number 1, tracking out all the way over the edge of the curb, almost into the grass on corner exit, trying to carry the speed. And for second place, Portad feeling the pressure now, and this is all focus to try to keep these cars behind. Again, Portad's not racing the 33 directly for class position, but he is racing him for overall today.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the bragging rights to be able to finish second overall, so he's definitely pushing as hard as he can, and it's really interesting to see the change in lap times that Donji, he previously was able to run 2:07, but now he's running 2:11, so kind of that shows you how kind of being close to other cars really changes how much grip you have, because it'll take some grip away from the arrow if you're really close to another car and things like that.
Some really great racing here, and Portad, just like in Sonoma, is doing a spectacular job holding off a driver with a higher classified rating than him, so he's doing an amazing job. Donji putting so much pressure on, but Portad has yet to crack under it, and Kurtz, again, just has to stay behind this 33 and be able to take advantage of it. I'm not sure that he's close enough right now to be able to be there if the 20 has to give that spot up, but a big slip there out of the carousel, and now the run to the kink. Is Donji going to take him double wide? Here comes Kurtz. A look up the inside towards the kink. He backs in line. Not a wise decision to go double wide through the kink there, Kevin.
No, it's possible to do, but you definitely have to have a lot of respect for the car that you're doing it with. So it's definitely, you can see that the cars are kind of fast in different places, and it's really interesting to see how they're trying to take advantage of that right now.
Great battle for second here with Donji. Had a moment where George Kurtz thought he was going to get on by for a second, but backed out before the kink. So again, second, third, fourth, and fifth, all on your screen. Portad, Donji, Kurtz, Askew. The DXDT racing cars, fourth and fifth overall, first and second in GT3 Pro-Am. As we have 21 minutes and 45 seconds left to go, it's going to feel like a lifetime for Portad.
Yeah, that's right. It's really hard to have a close battle like this for 20 minutes straight, but it is possible as long as you can kind of keep your head down and not make any big mistakes and keep running your race.
And in behind, we saw Askew stepping out of line, having a look at Kurtz, and maybe just saying, hey, maybe we should swap again as we get towards the end of the race. Oh, look at Portad doing a little bit of a defense on Donji there. But I think it's the kink. I think this is where this is all going to come to a head here, is if Portad continues to have that little bobble down there, it's going to give Donji a much better run into Canada corner. It's all about defending. Look at the headlights flashing on the 33 as he's trying to get the 20 driver distracted. Now running into turn number 5, too far back to make a dive here, but he's going to give it a try. He's in way late, and the ABS saving that car, and every time you're leaning on it, that pedal's going nuts under your right foot, as it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, I think Donji maybe thought he had broke a little bit too late. You sort of saw him jerk the wheel just a little bit, so he wouldn't run into the back of the Porsche. So I'm sure he was happy not to make any contact there. But he's definitely pushing the limits right now.
Hordad's defense is you're going to start wearing him out at this point. I mean, this has got to be really intense for the driver in the blue and white Porsche through the carousel now, hugging that inside line, trying not to have the same slip up. Look at Donji widening out this line, going to try to late apex and carry speed onto the straight. And look at the run that he gets right here. He's going to take it as he goes to the inside towards the kink. And he's got a little bit of overlap, and this time they're going to run side by side. Hordad makes a mistake. Here comes Kurtz. This is for third as they come through. And wow, what a battle that was for a moment. And I can't believe they did that without going wide.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of respect there, and they both slowed down to let that happen, but that's what opened the door up for George, and it looks like David's also trying to take advantage, but couldn't quite do it. So the Porsche definitely was the loser in that scenario, but great to see George up into third overall.
Speeds through that section well over 100 miles an hour, and running through there side by side is pretty challenging. Now look at Askew up the inside. Is there a bit of a touch? There was, and the 20 is going to get knocked a little bit wide, but now both DXDT Racing cars are through. That will put them, I believe, third and fourth, with Donji going from second to fifth in only a matter of moments.
Right. It's whenever you have a grouping of cars that close, it's really easy for that to happen. One little bobble and several cars start going by, and then every time a car goes by, it slows you down even more, and it just keeps compounding on itself.
Got freight train to bulldoze there a little bit. There goes the DXDT Racing car, the 63 Askew, a little bit wide in turn one. Now less than 20 minutes to go, and I think now we get a second to breathe after all that. But Kurtz taking a great advantage of that, put himself right now on a podium position in overall.
That's right, and kind of another result of that is he's got a little bit more of a gap to David behind him. So you're right. I think he's taking a deep breath and trying to relax just a little bit, because that was some intense racing out there.
It was intense. It was all happening about 27 seconds behind Shelby Blackstock in the 93 Racers Edge Motorsports car. And this team, again, we've talked about it time and time again, how solid they've been, just so few mistakes. A slight hang-up on pit lane, but it has not slowed their progress. Indy Donji goes to second. George Kurtz, Askew, and Hordad, the rest of the top five here. Fuentes, the other Pro-Am car, down in sixth overall as we get to the final 18 minutes of this with Blackstock out front.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what lap times George and David end up doing now that they're not being held up by Hordad, because Fuentes was actually running really fast laps compared to them. So there was a chance that he was going to catch them, but maybe now that they're not being held up, they'll be able to equalize that.
Yeah, again, it's about 7 seconds between Hordad and Fuentes as it stands, but he was gaining on them 4 to 5 seconds a lap when they were battling like that, because it's very slow to race side by side. as much as it looks fast, you're really way off pace when you're side by side with drivers and having to concede corners like that. But no conceding was George Kurtz. That was exactly the right thing to do. The opportunity, the door opened by Donji's bonsai move up the inside in the kink, and then through comes Kurtz to take advantage of it, puts himself in P3. Great solid racing there as Askew jumps into fourth. I think I'm sure there's a lot of drivers cheering on the pit wall down there for him as they were making those moves.
Yeah, honestly, that shows even though David and George don't have as much experience as their pros do, they've learned a ton in this amount of time, and they're able to do some of those moves that even the pro would have been trying to set up as well.
And you see the wing shaking on the back of that car. That's really interesting to get a look at the aerodynamics at play here. When it's in high speed, all that turbulence is kind of shaking that wing around a little bit. And aerodynamics are a really interesting topic of discussion with cars that are going this fast. We were talking yesterday about aero wash or understeer kind of induced by a leading car. Think about each one of these cars as a boat, and the air is water. And every time that you're driving a car through the air, it makes the water the air, I should say, very turbulent, much like a boat does in the water. And if you're following that on a straightaway, that might be a good thing because it's pushing the water out of the way. You get to the corner, well, you don't have any water to work with there. It's all turbulent and a mess. So following someone very closely is nice on a straight. You get to a corner in these high-speed cars, Kevin, maybe not so much fun.
Right. I mean, the aerodynamics on these cars are designed without another car in front of the car. So whenever you get your car behind another one, then all of a sudden all these aero devices are disrupted and they don't function the way they were designed to. So a lot of the benefit that you get from it just isn't there anymore.
Right, and that sort of is a factor the faster and faster you get with these cars. But manufacturers do everything they can to sort of negate that. But dirty air is dirty air, and that's sort of the reference. That's what we would call it, at least in oval racing, is dirty air. It's sort of turbulent air that you can't use those wings and those splitters for. As Blackstock comes across the line with just over 15 minutes to go. Let's look ahead a little bit in the schedule. What's coming up for you, Kevin, and how's the championship fight looking for you?
Well, I mean, we have 2 more events left in the season. We have COTA, which is replacing Watkins Glen because we can't go there, and we've already been there once this year, so that'll be the first time.
Category overall goes to Mark Issa here today, and Mark, I know this is a big moment for you. Yes. After a testing crash just a couple months ago, right? To be able to put that behind you. Get back to a racetrack as daunting as Road America and come away with a win. How satisfying is that achievement?
Yeah, I think the most satisfying thing is not just getting back up, but being able to get back up and pull out a win. Going in for the overall just meant that I was thinking the whole time I wanted to get better and better every lap, every session, and I had a great team behind me, a great car, and that made it possible. So, you get knocked down, but it matters how you get up.
Really great performance from you all weekend long. Congratulations on getting back to victory lane.
Hey, thank you very much. Road America is always great. It's such a challenging track, so fast. SRO puts a great program together, and you know what? Even though we're socially distant, we're really, really connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go back to your schedule. So COTA's replacing Watkins Glen. Obviously, you said we can't go there. So you've already been to COTA this year. How'd that go, and how do you think you're going to do this next time we go there?
Well, the interesting thing about going back to COTA is this will be the first time that I get to go back to a track with the car I'm racing and have raced there before. So every track so far this season is the first time that I've ever driven this car on that track. So I have a little bit of knowledge about what the car needed to go fast there, and hopefully we'll be able to use that to our advantage to kind of keep in the hunt for this championship. I think we, because of the 2 wins on Friday and Saturday of this weekend, both those races, the championship leaders had really bad races, so that opened up the door for me to make up a lot of points. And I think after finishing second today, I think the top 3 are going to be separated by only a few points leading into COTA.
So a lot of drama heading in there. There's some replays of the action we were just watching a few laps ago. Some really solid racing after the first part of the first half of the race was sort of drivers kind of finding their groove. And we mentioned earlier, once you swap the drivers out, you don't really know what's going to happen. We saw that quite a bit. There's Donji in the 33 car. Second place now. George Kurtz and David Askew a little ways back, but 13 minutes to go here. Blackstock, Donji, Kurtz, Askew, and Portad the top 5. Fuentes again still running some pretty quick laps, but not really in contention for a top 2 or for a race win in Pro-Am as it stands. So we talked that we can't go to Watkins Glen. That's a track that I'm local to, and that's a place that holds a special place in my heart because it's very similar to this track in a lot of ways with the racing town history and all that. But again, that's another fast track with a lot more sweeping corners than point and shoot, so that's a fun one as well. Disappointed we can't go, but hopefully next year, next time, we'll get to go out there and give that a shot. With 12.5 minutes left to go at Road America, at the National Park of Speed under the Sargento Bridge. You know there's a Sargento factory right down the street?
Yeah, I've been seeing that exact truck drive down the road every morning.
With Rebellion timepieces. And with Total.
I thought the Sargento trucks were sort of a myth. I'd never seen one before, and I get into Wisconsin, they're everywhere. You can't avoid them. But there's a Sargento factory right down the street, and this is a really great place for food and beverage. This whole area is very much in the cheese industry, the beer industry, the spotted cow that everyone always talks about. Whoa, a little wide there for David Askew out of turn 7. But this is a really cool place, a really cool part of the country that I've never been to before, and I get to return here in a couple weeks for Grid Life, so I get to come back, which is awesome. But then there's Indianapolis at the end of the season for these guys as well. That's going to be a fun race at IMS. I think that's going to be a fun race to watch. And there's Askew and Kurtz. They're separated by a couple seconds now. But I think Kurtz right now is showing that he's got very close pace to Askew, but Askew 0.3 faster last time by. So what do you think? Do you think Askew can get the job done?
I don't know. I mean, based on how hard it was for both of them to get by Poor Dad, I don't think a few tenths is going to be enough. But it'll really come down to kind of just keep doing that, and then if the driver in front makes a mistake, then you might be able to take advantage of it. But based on raw pace and how much speed you kind of lose because of that kind of turbulent air that we were talking about earlier, it might be pretty hard to get by.
Now, here's an interesting fight. That's Poor Dad and Fuentes. This is going to be for fifth place overall. Fuentes chasing down Poor Dad by about 2 seconds the lap. And Poor Dad's really sort of dropped off the pace a little bit the last couple laps, and it just seems like he's kind of getting run down, which after running second for the majority of the race is going to sort of be a little bit of a disappointing end to their day because they were doing such a great job. Then Donji gets by and opened the floodgates. Everybody came on through, but still a really solid job, and they held off longer than I thought they were going to be able to.
Right, and I think a little bit of that is Poor Dad is running actually similar laps that he was earlier, but the Kurtz and Askew were just capable of running faster times, so they pulled away once they got by. And Fuentes here has been running fast laps for a while, and especially when they were caught behind Poor Dad, he was catching them really fast. So it'll be interesting to see if he also gets held up by Poor Dad, or if he can kind of find a way to get by quickly.
So going back, one of the tools that we've been using to analyze this race this afternoon has been the P1TS software, which is this really neat telemetry tool that we've been utilizing. We use it at Sonoma as well. And it sort of allows us to analyze lap times and very specific parts of lap times. We can look at individual sectors as well. But one of my favorite things is this gap chart here. And you can see the blue line is the 04. That is Colin Brown and George Kurtz. The orange is the 63. That's the sister car. And then the white is the 33. That's Indy Donji. You can see when Donji jumped in that car, it just picked up pace and drove right on by. But this is such a cool tool. We can go to a different screen and look at all the sector times and estimated times. And this is such a really cool tool that allows us to really get in depth and more information than a lot of people know that we can get access to. And this is all thanks to P1TS and their partnership with AWS. This is all running in the AWS cloud, and it's a pretty spectacular piece of kit here.
Right, and a lot of the teams use this software in pit lane to really try to analyze where some of the competition is fast, and they relay some of that information to the drivers on track to kind of help them out and maybe make them a little bit more competitive.
On the left side of your screen, you're watching the number 20 of Poor Dad and Fuentes as well, and you can see right on the bottom of your screen, they're basically overlaid right on top of each other, and we have this live track map where we can follow their progress around the racetrack and know where everybody is. See the 93 sort of the middle of your screen, that's the race leader, then the 33 Indy Donji, the 0463, they're down in turn 1 with the box around them, and there's the 20 and the 1 into the first corner, and they're separated by only about 1.5 tenths, 2 tenths of a second. And let me tell you, that Fuentes car, he's coming.
Yeah, he's definitely really fast, but you can see even though he was closing at nearly 2 seconds a lap, now that he's right behind the Porsche, it's he's not able to just drive right by. So that just goes to say how much the aero is really important for these cars. When you're right behind another car, you don't have as much of it, and it's really hard to pass.
Under 7 minutes or under 8 minutes to go here as we watch this battle for position. This is again for 5th overall. That is again Poor Dad and Fuentes as they go through turn 5, and the pace difference, as you mentioned, a couple seconds a lap. But as soon as you get in this dirty air, you start having this car in the way. Man, it's inconvenient, and you want to get by, but it's not easy to get by. You have to not only outsmart the driver, but they're going to start driving defensively now, and that sort of makes things even more difficult. So, in your mind, what's the best strategy to get around a driver that's defending every corner? Is there an over-under move that you do, or how do you kind of approach that situation if a driver is going to take your line away?
Well, I think I like to really be aggressive and try to make the other driver tend to overdrive, and in the hopes of them making enough of a mistake, nothing huge, but enough of a mistake where I can get a little bit of a run and maybe pass them a corner or two later. So especially when we're going through a high-speed section like the kink and into Canada Corner here, you're really trying to set them up for a mistake earlier in the turn so that you can pass them here in the brake zone, and you're not necessarily trying to get it done all in one turn either. If you can get just beside them here and then kind of position yourself in a place to pass them several turns later, that's still part of the goal. You want to set it up and then slowly do it over time.
Fuentes on the brakes hard into turn 14, tracking out using every little bit of the pavement. 6.5 minutes to go, just over 3 laps remaining as it stands. And again, that's we run until the end of 90 minutes, and at the lap that will tick down to 0 will be our white flag lap. Look at Fuentes now in the slipstream, in the draft. That Porsche pushing all the air out of the way. Here comes the Ferrari to the inside on the brakes. Deep on the brakes. Can he get the car stopped? He's going to run a little bit wide. No, he actually does a nice job. And Portad's going to try to respond. Oh, a block by the one car. A defensive move, and he's through.
Yeah, I think he kind of went in really hot and carried the brakes really late into the apex to kind of make sure he didn't go off the track, which kind of helped prevent the crossover move from the Porsche. But you could see the Porsche still had a lot of speed at the exit and tried to get back around.
Nice.
But this battle's not over, that's for sure.
He's going to have a look down here into turn 5, but just can't quite get down there. Talk about blocks versus defensive line. A block is really when you deviate from your line in reaction to a trailing car, and a defensive line is sort of taking it before the other car does, moving first. You get one move. Kevin, how useful of a tool is that as a race car driver to keep yourself out front?
Well, I mean, especially every driver seems to have a different definition of between blocking and defensive, but in the end, like you said, you really get one decision of once you exit the turn, do you want to stay to the left or the right? And you kind of, as a driver, you decide that based on kind of the track ahead of you. If there's a bunch of left-hand turns coming ahead, then maybe you want to stay to the left. But if there's a bunch of right-hand turns, you would want to do the opposite. So it really depends on what track is ahead of you, and maybe even if the car behind you is better in one section of the track or not, you can kind of put yourself in a position that doesn't allow them to use that advantage, and that's the way to be really defensive. But like we saw there, whenever the car behind you kind of chooses, I'm going to go to the right, and then you move to the right, then generally that's labeled as blocking.
And we talked about having a good defense. Well, sometimes the best defense is a great offense. And looking back at P1TS here, you can see Shelby Blackstock and Indy Donji, their defense has been offense today. And you can see their lap times still in the mid 208s compared to the 210 for Kurtz, 209.9 for Askew, who are battling for 3rd and 4th right now overall. So the silver-rated drivers just driving away, but that's after Donji got through that pack, he has had no one to deal with. But Kurtz and Askew, and let me tell you, George Kurtz has had an epic drive today. He did a great job kind of analyzing the situation with Donji and Portad, was able to take advantage of that and put himself in the race lead on his stint, so or at least for Pro-Am. So they're going to come away with a trophy here if they can hold off their teammate, and there is the overall race leader of Blackstock and Trent Hinman. So with just about 3.5 minutes to go here, getting down to what should be, what do we think, 2, maybe 3 laps to go? Probably 2 when we come on through. And through the kink, the speed that you carry through there is insane. They actually just paved a brand new section of curbing out there, which I'm sure a lot of drivers have discovered and maybe over-discovered, because it's pretty brutal stuff.
It's yeah, I tried it out, and it's definitely pretty disruptive to say the least. But at times I tried to use it in the race today just to carry a little bit more speed, but it definitely upsets the car, and you end up for me I ended up in the grass just a little bit, but staying on the track for the most part. But
the grass is part of the track, right?
That's right.
It's within the walls, so it counts.
Yeah, it depends on how much dirt comes up, I guess. But
and there's the one car, Fuentes, who's gotten through into 5th. And that's a good recovery for that team, that they sort of dropped down the orders just a little bit as Kurtz and Askew got on through. So Portad, again, that team did a pretty good job earlier in this race holding off, but just not quite enough pace to defend. Here's another look at the pass. You can see the one car pull out to the right, deep on the brakes, and you mentioned just trail braking just a little bit just to keep the car from running wide. And on exit here, gets the car straight and goes back over to the right just to keep the 20 from responding into turn 3. A great piece of driving there, and he's through to 5th. So next time through, I would expect to see the white flag. 2 minutes and 16 left on the clock. So wherever Shelby Blackstock is, and actually this is one of the things we can do in P1TS is find out exactly where Shelby Blackstock is. He is the yellow dot with the yellow box around him. He is the race leader. He's heading into turn 6 right now, and there he is on screen. That's what's so cool about this P1TS software is if you're down in the paddock or you're in the bleachers watching and you want to know where the leader is, hey, you can load up P1TS, go, oh, look, there he is, found him. You don't have to have an eyeball on him at all times, which is great for strategy purposes as well.
That's right.
So 1:45 left, braking zone for turn 8. And now rolling into the carousel at speed, and it's been a pretty quiet day for them since the drop of the green flag. No dramas this time. They had a penalty out in Sonoma a couple weeks ago, and that was a whole dramatic moment. There was also a full course yellow in one of the Sonoma races that kind of mixed things up as well. No, nothing of that sort to worry about today. There was a full course yesterday at the beginning of the race, but pretty much clean and green today.
Yeah, and that's kind of, especially when you're as fast as they've been this today, that's what you really want. You want no cautions. You want everything to just go smooth, and you try to specifically make no mistakes at all, because they obviously had the speed to win today, so they didn't want to throw it away by anything small like that.
So 50 seconds left on the clock. That means we're going to hit 0 on the next lap, which means that the white flag will be displayed from the starter stand. That means 1 lap to go from the National Park of Speed at Road America. And Shelby Blackstock, Trent Hinman will come across the line. That means 4 miles left for them and 14 more turns to wrap up another victory here this weekend. Indy Donji in behind. Looking at the lap times on P1TS, Indy Donji actually now has one of the fastest laps of the race here. How about a 2:07.369? That's hauling the mail around here.
Wow, that's really fast for race pace, so that's pretty impressive.
And you know what's interesting is that he's actually slower. You can see the purple designates that he's the fastest driver in that particular sector. There are 3 sectors around this racetrack. It's split up into 3 sections. And interestingly, Hinman is faster in 2 of them, but Donji fastest in the middle sector by enough to overcome the being off pace a little bit in sector 1 and 3. So Donji, a 2:07.369, the fastest lap that we've seen this afternoon as Blackstock hits turn number 5. As we wrap this up this afternoon, make sure that you subscribe to the CrowdStrike Racing YouTube channel for more content like this. Make sure you follow CrowdStrike Racing on Twitter. And Kevin, while we finish this up, where can they follow you on the social medias in the internet bubble?
Yeah, I live mostly on Instagram and Facebook, so you can search for Kevin Boehm Racing, and that should lead you to both Instagram and Facebook. So that's the best place to stay up to date on which tracks we're at, what we're doing. I try to post everything on the maintenance that we do on the car between the tracks, and kind of all those little things even at the race, behind the scenes and things like that.
Yeah, behind the scenes is always fun to watch as well. So appreciate that, Kevin. As we head through the kink for the final time, Blackstock carries that speed and out in front by 21 seconds over Indy Donji. And this Acura NSX has been a pretty successful car in this series so far, but the battle that we were watching all day today, George Kurtz, David Askew, and their teammates Colin Brown and Ryan DL, they are going to come home, as long as they finish this lap, they're going to come home with a 1st and 2nd in class, which is going to be a victory for everybody here. A really solid day for them as Blackstock comes on through. And at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, Blackstock will drive up the hill on the Acura NSX GT3 in checkered flag waving, and Blackstock and Hinman bring Racers Edge Motorsports their 2nd win of the weekend. Checkered flag and victory for Racers Edge Motorsports. And a celebration on the pit lane as Blackstock rips on by. Wow, that looked fast. And a little ways back, Indy Donji with his teammate in the 33. That's the Windward Racing car with Russell Ward. They will come home 2nd, but for George Kurtz and Colin Brown for the Pro-Am category, they are going to take home a checkered flag and a trophy. That's going to feel real good after the day they had yesterday.
That's right. This is the best result that you could hope for, especially after a kind of a not-so-great day. So in the end, this is great for the team, great for CrowdStrike Racing, great for DXDT.
And DXDT Racing going to pick up a 1st and a 2nd here today. And checkered for George Kurtz and Colin Brown. And you can see the celebration. There's Colin and Jeff, father and son combination, and behind David Askew. And they did a great job as well, along with Ryan DL. They rose to the occasion and got through Poor Dad all together with George Kurtz. And there's Fred Poor Dad in the Wright Motorsports car with Max Root. They will come home in 6th place overall in their AM entry. So a good race there. But that is checkered flag here from Road America. Kevin, your final thoughts on that race?
Well, I mean, it was really good to see this race go caution-free. I think there was a lot of close battles on track and lots of passing, and everything was clean. So I think overall this was a great example of GT racing and World Challenge.
An amazing race this afternoon, especially for 2nd overall when Indy Donji was trying to get on by Fred Poor Dad. So great result there. Racers Edge Motorsports up on top. The twin DXDT racing cars, 3rd and 4th overall, 1st and 2nd in Pro-Am. They're going to get to celebrate down in pit lane. We'll have Ryan Marine in a few minutes for that as we wrap up this afternoon. But Kevin, thanks so much for joining me. And again, you've got COTA here in a couple weeks, so good luck to you there. Going to be a fun one, and I guess we'll see how that. I don't think I'm going down to that one, but I'm going to be rooting for you, and I guess we'll see you there. So congrats on your 2 wins and your second, and we'll see you in COTA.
All right, thanks for having me.
And back here in the booth, and thank you so much for joining us for the CrowdStrike Racing coverage of GT World Challenge America from Road America. This has been a pleasure. Again, my name's Kyle Heyer. I run a little sim broadcasting company called Sim TV, so make sure to look us up and check it out. And thanks again to Kevin Boehm and CJ Moses from CrowdStrike, AWS, and DXDT Racing for donating their afternoons to helping me out here up in the booth. And thanks so much to CrowdStrike and AWS for coming on board. And again, if you're unfamiliar with what CrowdStrike and AWS are, we'll do one more read-through here in just a moment once things conclude. But drivers celebrating. There are the Racers Edge Motorsports guys, Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman, heading to Victory Lane. We'll have Ryan Marine standing by. But again, a great day for CrowdStrike Racing. And CrowdStrike is the official internet and cloud security provider of SRO Americas and the presenting sponsor of the Road America Race Weekend. Effective cybersecurity means you see and stop threats like hackers as fast as possible, and that's why every second counts. AWS is the title presenter for the Global SRO Series GT World Challenge powered by AWS. For 13 years, AWS has been the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform, offering over 175 fully featured cloud computing services. Last year, the firm entered into a new collaboration that saw AWS become the official cloud and machine learning provider for SRO America, as well as a series partner of Pirelli GT4 America and TC America. We thank them so much for their support of not only DXDT Racing, but also SRO America and GT World Challenge America. So celebrations on the pit lane.
This is close enough.
And we'll have Ryan Marine here in just a moment.
And no question about it, just about a picture-perfect weekend. And it all began just like in Race 1, here in Race 2, with the start. Trent, you were tasked with the start. You were able to grab that lead. How did you do it, and then how did you hold it?
I mean, definitely took advantage of the bottom-end torque that this Acura NSX GT3 has, that's for sure. But the big thing was just watching when the green flag would come out. It was that simple. Just got the jump, you know, saw the starter's hand move a little bit quicker, I think, and was able to roll from there. And the biggest thing for my stint was just making sure I kept the car in one piece for Shelby. I mean, Road America tends to be a relatively rough track on equipment if you decide it to be. So if you start, pounding curbs, doing all that stuff, you can make your day a little bit more complicated than you want. So Shelby did an awesome job in his stint. Obviously, the Racers Edge Motorsports guys did a great job in pit lane. I think we hit our pit time just perfectly today. And, yeah, looking forward to COTA.
Absolutely, we are as well. Thank you, Trent. Shelby can step on in now. And Shelby, especially after a weekend at Sonoma that wasn't 100% according to plan, to have one that went pretty darn smoothly, at least from the outside. Feel good? Does that give you some momentum for the rest of the year?
Absolutely. I mean, we started this race just the same we did at COTA. I mean, this Acura NSX GT3 EVO was on rails today. We made improvements to the car overnight, and we just really, luckily I was able to manage a pace. Turned out a really good opening stint. The team had a perfect pit stop, so pretty good weekend.
Congratulations. Well
Thank
done.
you.
And again, that was Racers Edge Motorsports guys, Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman, who have done an amazing job this season. Winners at Sonoma, now winners at Road America. And you can see the two DXDT racing cars, Colin Brown, George Kurtz, David Askew, and Ryan DL on pit lane. And again, winners and second place finishers.
Thanks, Greg.
Here's Ryan
How
Ray.
about this? A bounce back for sure for the CrowdStrike duo, George Kurtz and Colin Brown. After the disappointment yesterday, George, how good does it feel to get on the overall podium and the top step in class?
Oh, it feels fantastic. We just, it wasn't our day yesterday. We regrouped. DXDT team and the CrowdStrike team did a fantastic job getting the car ready to go. And, we just executed really well. And we all weekend. So at least we were able to redeem ourselves for Sunday, and a great run by Colin and a great job by the entire team.
Really great job here this weekend and today. Congratulations on the bounce back as well. Good job.
Thank you.
And that's going to wrap things up here for our CrowdStrike Racing coverage of GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Again, this has been Road America. We're going to be back in the future, so make sure you subscribe to this channel. Follow CrowdStrike Racing on Facebook as well as Instagram and Twitter to make sure that you catch up all the updates when this field heads to COTA in just a few weeks. Again, my name is Kyle Heyer. I was joined yesterday by CJ Moses in the AWS CrowdStrike Honda Civic Type R TCR, and today by Kevin Boehm, driver of the CrowdStrike AWS Honda Civic SI TCA car. So congratulations to both those drivers, for CJ for podiuming yesterday, and as well for Kevin Boehm for winning 2 of his 3 races, finishing second in the other. And again, we'll see you again around. Thank you so much to CrowdStrike Racing and AWS, and we'll see you next time. Again, my name's Kyle Heyer. We'll see you around.
Hello, I'm CJ Moses, the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Amazon Web Services. Coming on as title sponsor with the SRO has allowed us to create new innovation, to use our technologies in ways they've never been used before. The cloud is very capable. All of these 195 services that we offer provide vast different capabilities, but customers come up with even better ways to use it than we ever thought of. In the case of the SRO, we're going to be bringing better experiences through to the TV itself. Second screen experiences where we're going to be doing a lot of predictive analytics and things like that. These are the types of things that we want to see our customers from AWS actually do, and by partnering with the SRO, we're introducing it to a whole new venue and to sports cars. We're bringing a lot of excitement to it as well. And when you have excited fans that are getting a better experience, and we're able to showcase the technology that AWS has doing that, I think it's a win-win for SRO, for us, and for the fans that are actually engaged in the watching of the event.